Hello, friends. We are interested in the geography of our views, so please like and write in the comments from which city are you watching us, and were there loud stories of betrayal in your city? Share your stories with us. Maybe the next betrayal story will be from your city. And we start. Brassen Lowell has always thought that the concept of true happiness begins when you have a family, a home, and a job that you not only tolerate, but respect. He grew up in a small town in South Carolina, where everyone knew everyone and life flowed smoothly, like the steady lapping of waves on the shore. When he turned 18, he tied the knot with Danielle, his high school sweetheart and later his beloved wife. They had a daughter, Sky, a 14-year-old girl who had both the liveliness of a teenager and quiet dreaminess. Brayson himself was a strong guy, about 1 meter 90 in height, with strong hands, rough calluses, and kind eyes. He worked as an electrician in a stable, reliable company, where his hard work and accuracy were appreciated. Every day he woke up early in the morning, made coffee for himself and his wife, sometimes adding a little cinnamon syrup to it. He knew that Danielle loved that flavor. Before leaving for the car, he made sure that he had left enough money for all sorts of little things: ice cream for Sky, groceries, or unexpected expenses, and only then left for the site. In their house, which they bought with a mortgage several years ago, everything looked as if life itself had tried to create an ideal picture of the family hearth. A spacious kitchen with a large wooden countertop, a cozy living room where there was a dilapidated but beloved sofa, and around there were photographs covering the walls. Among these photos, Sky's first steps, school holidays, birthdays, family trips to the ocean, and, of course, general photos with Trevor Hendricks, Brayson's best friend from a long time. Trevor was the complete opposite. A tall, thin businessman, richer and freer in his actions than Brayson. He lived in the center of a large city in a stylish loft with panoramic windows, drove a brand new Mustang, and wore tailored suits. He remained a bachelor for a long time, changed girls like gloves, and in the presence of Brayson and Danielle, he often sighed, "Oh, I wish I had a family like this." All the years of his friendship with Trevor, Brayson reassured his friend with half-joking words. "Wait, you'll meet the one again. In the meantime, come for dinner. Danielle will cook something delicious, and Sky will show her new drawings." Such invitations were common in their family. Trevor still seemed not just a visiting guest, but almost a member of the family after all. He was there at Brayson's wedding, and in the maternity hospital when Sky was born, and then helped out financially many times when the young couple had not yet gotten out of college debt. But time passed, and it seemed that life had put everything in its place. Brasson was no longer ashamed of the fact that he had a simple job, because it was his reliability that provided stability for the family. He paid the mortgage, paid for a family vacation. Once a year, they went to the North Carolina coast, where they rented a small house by the sea, fished, and barbecued. Trevor sometimes visited them for a couple of days. He put on a simple t-shirt. Although the inscription on this t-shirt cost a lot of money, only Danielle noticed this, who had time to look at the branded labels. Otherwise, Trevor on the beach was no different from good friends who loved time with family people. Sky loved these trips. She always felt safe with her father. If she suddenly slipped off her surfboard, he would immediately rush into the water. If she had problems with mathematics at school, he would sit down in the evenings to sort out formulas with her. And Trevor, in turn, entertained the girl with stories from his childhood, bribed her with bright gifts from other states, because he often traveled around the country on business affairs. Danielle seemed to be a woman from the Southern calendar. Fiery red hair, lavish smile, golden freckles on her face, light eyes. Her character combined both warm care and sometimes a sharp outburst of emotions. But no one suspected that behind this lay changes that had been brewing in secret for a long time. If you look from the outside, they almost had the American dream. A house in a nice neighborhood, a lawn in front of the house, good neighbors, a quiet life. Brasson knew that he was not an oligarch or the owner of a corporation, but he got up to work before dawn and returned to his family in the evenings with confidence in the future. He paid all the bills so that his wife could go shopping at any time, so that Sky had books, clothes, and the opportunity to go on excursions from school. Actually, that's how the years went by, until the day that changed everything. When, at the end of one hot week, Brasson's boss said that he could take the next day off, the crew was dismissed due to a delay in materials. Brasson decided to surprise his wife. He thought, I'll get home early, bring some hot pizza, grab a bouquet of roses on the way, and have a movie night. Maybe Sky will want to watch another teen comedy with us, and then I'll finally get around to fixing the shelves in the garage. His soul was warm. He almost called Danielle to say that he would arrive not at 6 in the evening, but a little earlier, but decided to keep the effect of surprise. Let there be a surprise. She's been saying for a whole week that she's tired. Let her rest, and I'll do everything for her. After buying pizza, he stopped at a flower shop along the road. The saleswoman smiled and handed over a bouquet of roses tied with a blue ribbon. For my beloved wife? She asked. I'm glad that a man pampers his wife with flowers not only on holidays. Brayson grinned and thanked him before getting back into the car. He dreamed of holding Danielle in his arms. Maybe the two of them will even go to the center for a couple of hours, walk along the ancient streets, while Sky is busy with her own business. A year has already passed since their last outing together. There are too many worries, payments, parental responsibilities. But on the way home, I suddenly felt as if an alarming premonition had pierced me somewhere inside, as if something bad was hanging in the air. But he chided himself. This is nonsense. Damn it, I'm doing good. There is work, there is money, my daughter is healthy, my wife is nearby. As he approached the house, he noticed a black Mustang at the side of the road. Familiar outlines. The license plate, I remember. Trevor once said that it was custom. Brayson stopped and frowned. It's strange. What is he doing here in the middle of the day? After all, Trevor, as far as Brasson knew, was planning a business trip to Texas. But maybe he returned earlier, or didn't fly anywhere at all. Brasson got out of the car and carefully closed the door so as not to make any noise. He stepped towards the house. I placed the pizza and flowers on the bench on the porch. The hand itself reached for the keys, but the door was not locked. Well, apparently Trevor came in as usual, and Danielle didn't think it was necessary to close the door since I was supposed to come later, he thought. As soon as he crossed the threshold, something inside became cold. It was unusually quiet, as if someone had turned off the sounds in the house. No TV, no music, no footsteps from Sky. Perhaps his friend's daughter, Danielle. Then he heard whispers and indistinct phrases coming from the upper floor. I can't pretend anymore, a female voice said. Wait a little longer, a male voice said. Maybe Trevor is discussing something with Danielle. What are they talking about? Brayson's temples were pounding with some kind of sticky anxiety. He was about to call loudly to make his presence known. But at that moment, he heard a phrase that made his heart go cold. I never really loved him the way I love you. Danielle said this, almost in a whisper, but in the deep silence of the house, these words reached Brayson like a clap of thunder. He froze. Instinctively, he quietly placed his foot on the first step of the stairs. I went up to the platform between the floors. Sounds came from the slightly open bedroom door, muffled moans and short sobs, obviously passionate, unmistakable. Everything that was the solid foundation of his life collapsed in that second. He opened the door and saw his wife on the bed. Next to her was Trevor, half naked, holding Danielle close to him. It was as if something black had exploded inside Brayson. What the hell? Was all he could say, so loudly that his voice broke into a scream. Trevor jumped back, Danielle screamed, clutching the sheet as if it could hide the shame and guilt and betrayal. Brasson stood motionless, feeling the blood pounding in his temples and swimming in front of his eyes. My heart was pounding so hard that it seemed like it was about to jump out. Damn, Brace. Trevor began to mutter something, throwing on his jeans. It's not what you think. Fuck you, Brayson growled, and at that moment he didn't notice how he clenched his fists. Danielle said, I'll explain everything. What will you explain? He roared. I saw everything I needed. There was a feeling of terrible failure in my stomach. A burning pain filled my chest. the very people he considered closest, best friend, beloved wife. How could he not notice that something was happening between them? After all, Trevor has been at their house too often lately in his absence. Or, on the contrary, did everything coincide right now? Danielle jumped out of bed, trying to find some clothes. Trevor, bare-chested, looked confused. It was an absurd and insanely cruel scene where everyone lost their human face. "Shut up, both of you," Brasson hissed. You ruined everything for me." For a moment, the desire flashed through his mind to hit Trevor so that he would fly out the window, but the next second he realized, this will only make things worse. However, he could not stand still. He felt how rage was growing inside, how everything was bubbling and collapsing. "Brayson," Trevor began, putting on his shirt, "feelings have arisen between us. What the hell are feelings?" Brayson shouted in despair. "Your friendship, your talk about a real family, was it all a lie?" And then, with absolute calm, almost icy, Danielle's voice rang out. "I fell in love," she said, unable to look her husband in the eyes, turning to the wall. "I didn't want it to turn out this way, but Trevor and I have been together for a long time." "How long does this last?" Brayson's heart was beating like crazy. Silence. Hold for a few moments. And she said, 6 months. 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of constant betrayal. 6 months in which Brasson paid for the house where Trevor stayed with his wife. 6 months in which he cooked breakfast, not suspecting that at night. My mind refused to accept this. "And why are you telling me this now?" he asked with anguish. "Because I'm already tired of pretending," she answered. "And I want a divorce." The word divorce hit him like a punch in the gut. He couldn't believe it. "Divorce? Is this the end? What about our daughter? What about our life? 16 years of marriage?" Trevor was silent, looking tensely to the side, already buttoning his shirt, as if he wanted to escape as quickly as possible, without delving into the suffering of others. "Do you understand what you are saying?" Brayson's voice broke into a half-whisper. "Are you talking about divorce?" "Yes," Danielle confirmed. "Sorry, but it will be better this way." "Better? For whom? For you? For you and Trevor?" Flashed through my head. Brayson felt despair give way to cold anger. He stepped towards Trevor and grabbed him by the collar. "Get out of my house immediately, and if I see you next to Sky again—" "Careful," Trevor muttered, trying to move Brayson's hands away. "I didn't do anything bad to her." "You destroyed her family," Brayson roared, pushing him towards the exit. He staggered, but stayed on his feet without starting to fight. "Go away, Trevor," Danielle said dully. Trevor, casting a quick glance at her, retreated, putting his feet in his boots, seemingly forgetting about his socks. It all happened so quickly, and at the same time so painfully, that when the front door slammed, Brasson seemed to lose the ability to breathe. He remained with his wife, who now looked up at him, did not hide her eyes, but there was no remorse or pity in her gaze. There was only one cold determination to see everything through to the end. "Please don't pretend that we can fix this," she said. I haven't felt happy with you for a long time. And even if it came out mean, but I want freedom." Freedom. It seemed to him that he could ask for forgiveness, he could beg, he could argue, fight, but this word, freedom, sounded like a sentence. "It's all over." He clenched his fists so as not to do anything stupid and said hoarsely, "And Sky? What will you tell her?" "We already talked to her," Danielle suddenly answered. She guessed. What?" Brayson gasped in shock. "Did she know about your affair?" "I guessed," Danielle repeated. "Teenagers are not blind." "And she said that I should do what would be best for me." "No, no." Brasson wanted to object. He was ready to burst into tears, but he could not show this weakness. Going downstairs, he went out onto the porch, not remembering the pizza and flowers. None of this mattered anymore. Sky returned home late in the evening. She did not expect to find her father sitting in the kitchen with a can of beer and looking into space. The tears that he couldn't squeeze out earlier when he stood in front of his wife and Trevor froze in his eyes. "Dad," she said carefully, taking off her sneakers, "what happened?" He looked up. Everything inside sank at the thought that his daughter was choosing a side. But he loved her too much to blame her for anything. "Sky, come here," he beckoned her, and she sat down next to him. "Mom isn't there?" the girl asked, looking around. "She's upstairs," he muttered, forcing out an English word, although he usually said upstairs. "You didn't talk to me about what it turns out, knew?" Sky frowned, lowering her eyes. "I saw how they joked and hugged together. At first, I thought it was just friendship. But then Mom and Trevor got these looks, Dad." They looked at each other as if, you know, the girl had difficulty finding words, avoiding direct mention of love or relationship. "Why didn't you tell me anything?" he responded bitterly. "I was afraid. Mom said that this was all temporary, that she would figure it out on her own." "She asked me not to tell you," Sky said quietly. "Sorry, Dad. No need to apologize, baby. It's not your decision. You're just a teenager, and we adults are confused," he sighed. "But I can't just stay like that. I was betrayed." "I know, and I'm very sad," she whispered. "What will happen now?" He looked at her sad eyes and understood that now the hardest thing lay ahead, sharing custody of her, deciding who would live and how. "We'll have to." He didn't have time to finish when Danielle appeared at the door, who seemed to be crying again. But seeing the two of them together, she quickly wiped her eyes. "Sky," she said in an even voice, trying not to look at her husband, "go to your room, please. I'll talk to my father." The girl gave them a look full of anxiety and went to her room. "I don't want any long showdowns," Danielle began. "I can't pay the house bill alone. I don't have the same income as you." "But a divorce is needed." "Will Trevor pay for you?" he asked sarcastically. "Maybe," she smiled bitterly, "but it's none of your business, sorry." Brasson paused, hoping that the anger would subside at least a little, but he only felt something hot in his mouth, as if it was burning. "I want custody of Sky," he said. "I'm not going to give her all your freedom. She's only 14. You won't be around. You'll live with." "I already talked to the lawyer," Danielle interrupted. "He said that in South Carolina, if we file for divorce by mutual consent, the court can ask the child who she wants to stay with." "And are you sure that she will choose you?" He stood up, looking at his wife as if he was seeing her for the first time. Danielle didn't answer. Her face was tense. She seemed unsure at all, but she still added, "I believe that Sky will not deprive me of my maternal rights." Everything inside him was twisted. He had difficulty swallowing the lump in his throat. "I really hope that our daughter will act according to her conscience," he concluded, going into the living room so as not to look at the traitor. The next 3 weeks passed in a kind of terrible fog. Danielle almost immediately moved some of her things to Trevor, who seemed to consider himself the winner in this dirty story, although he also looked pale and indecisive, as if he himself did not expect that everything would come to such an end. Sky cried more than once in her room, closing herself off from her father, but she didn't say much to Danielle either. The girl found herself drawn into that unfair whirlpool when the parents themselves cannot find a compromise and force the child to make a choice. "Dad, maybe you can make peace?" she asked one time when he was driving her to school in his pickup truck. "This is no longer possible," he answered briefly, without going into details. He couldn't sleep at night, imagining Trevor touching Danielle and how they spent time. All this drove him crazy. As soon as I closed my eyes, terrible images popped up in my head. He almost lost his temper one evening, having drunk more than necessary, and was about to go to Trevor, but stopped at the last moment. "Sky is still here, and I have to remain a support for her," he told himself. Danielle was cool and matter-of-fact. It was as if she had removed all past emotions from herself, including, not so long ago, love for her husband. Now all she thought about was getting a divorce and turning the page. One evening she came for the rest of her things. Brasson sat in the living room, persistently pretending to watch a football game. But in reality, he just wanted to look at his wife, see if she could be even a little sorry. "Don't you want to talk?" he asked when she was about to leave. "We already said that," she snapped. "What if Trevor leaves you in 6 months?" He blurted out. "Or will he just find another beauty?" She bit her lip. And suddenly, instead of being rude in response, she said quietly, "I'm not afraid of it. You see, our relationship died a long time ago. We just stubbornly pretended that nothing was happening. I'm tired, Brace. I'm tired of being a doll wife who does all the household chores and pretends to be happy with life. You are a good person, but we no longer loved each other." "Speak for yourself," he hissed. "I loved it, and now I love. But I'm not going to humiliate myself." "I'm sorry," that's all she said, and her voice sounded sincere, as if she was hurt too. He didn't answer. She left. Thus came the court hearings, which were incredibly difficult for Brayson. The judge called both Danielle and Brayson and invited Skye separately to get her opinion. In South Carolina, the court often takes into account the child's wishes if he is already 12, and Skye was 14. The day before the final hearing, Brayson and Danielle received documents outlining the possible terms of their divorce. The court could have ruled that Skye would remain with one of her parents and the other would have the right to visibility. Both parents, in theory, could claim custody, but much depended on the financial stability and personal desires of the child. In the evening, when Skye returned from school, her father sat down with her at the table in the kitchen. "Daughter, I don't know how else to say it," he began carefully. "You have the right to decide for yourself who you want to live with. I want you to know that I really want you to stay with me." Skye was silent, looking away. She had seemed lost and depressed in recent weeks. "I won't interfere with your communication with your mother," he continued. "I just can't lose you. You are the most precious thing in my life." The girl nodded, pursing her lips. It seemed that she did not have enough words to express everything that was accumulating inside. "Dad," she began quietly, "I know that you want the best for me. But you see, my mother is not my enemy either." "I didn't say that she's your enemy," he sighed, trying to suppress his offense. "I know that she is your mother, and I don't want to sow enmity. But the situation is such that we will have to live separately." "I understand," Skye whispered. I can't say no to her." He wanted to say, "You have to fight, choose what you think is right," but he understood that this was too heavy a burden on the shoulders of a teenager. "It's up to you, Skye, and I will make this decision, although my heart is breaking," he said. "But please think that I can give you stability, but with Mom, everything is uncertain." "I know," Skye nodded. "I love you, Dad. Very." He squeezed her hand, and at that moment he realized how much she was everything to him. She's only 14, and she already has to make this decision. He hated Danielle and Trevor for dragging their daughter into this nightmare. When the hearing began, the judge, after looking at the papers, turned to Skye in a calm voice. "Skye Lowell, you are old enough for the court to take your opinion into account. Who would you like to stay with?" A tense silence fell in the hall. Brasson looked at his daughter, trying to convey his support to her. Danielle looked at the floor, crossing her arms over her chest. Skye hesitated. It probably seemed to her that this was the hardest choice of her life. For several seconds, she could not squeeze out a word, and then finally whispered, I choose Mom." It was as if a lightning strike struck Brayson's mind. He couldn't believe his ears. "How? Why? After all, she said that she understood me," flashed through his head, but the words have already been spoken. The judge nodded dryly and continued filling out the papers. "Everything is decided," said Danielle's lawyer. "Thank you, Your Honor." It was as if a tight string had snapped inside Brayson. He sat, clenching his teeth, so as not to scream, so as not to break down right in the courtroom. This was the moment when the whole world collapsed. At the end of the hearing, he walked outside without waiting for anyone, not even Skye. Danielle and the lawyer were still signing something, and the girl stood, timidly shifting from foot to foot. The real horror of what she had done was visible on her face, but she followed her mother. That's what the court decided. None of the neighbors knew what was happening inside the Lowell family home until they saw things begin to disappear from the whitewashed steps of the tidy cottage at the end of a hot June day. First a suitcase was taken out, then a family photo, then kitchen chairs and even toys. Everything went to the front lawn. Surprised people stopped, secretly watching the scene. Brass and Lowell, usually friendly and ready to exchange a word at the fence, looked alien and unapproachable that day. His face was stony, his movements were clear, but torn inside by invisible, almost tangible pain. Some of the neighbors thought it was just a move, but the situation seemed too strange. The house was simultaneously emptying and at the same time becoming even more filled with a heavy atmosphere. On the porch, one of the old neighbors, Mrs. Murphy, quietly asked, "Bryson, son, what are you doing?" He didn't answer. He only nodded briefly, as if apologizing, and placed a box full of dishes near the threshold. Regular plates, blue saucers with edges reminiscent of waves, even a cup with the inscription, "Happy Father's Day," once given to Sky. Once she gave it with a sincere, embarrassed, "Dad, congratulations." These memories flashed in her head, somewhere deep inside, but now Brasson did not allow himself to feel. A small truck was already parked in front of the house, with "Helping Hands" written on its sides. Two volunteers came out, looked at each other slightly confused, and began dragging things into the back. They thought they could help those in need, but all this furniture, clothes, boxes of photo albums, it looked as if someone had completely crossed out an entire life. The telephone in the house no longer worked. There was silence inside, not a single piece of furniture, carpets, curtains, everything was stacked or packed in boxes. Only traces of paintings and photographs remained on the walls. On the kitchen table, or rather, in the place where the table had previously stood, there now lay a lonely receipt and next to it a piece of paper torn from an old notebook. Thin inscriptions, straight lines, written in a confident masculine handwriting. The amount of child support until Sky is 18 years old. You don't need anything more from me. And just below, the last phrase, cold and irrevocable. If you ask where I am, say that I will see you in hell. It was addressed to Danielle. No one knew where she was now, perhaps with Trevor Hendricks, who, after the recent trial, looked as confident a winner as ever. Neighbors saw the Helping Hands machine loading the last of the boxes before Brayson slammed the door shut in one decisive motion, checked the lock, inserted the key, and left it on the doorstep. Then he got into his pickup truck and drove away. Half an hour later, the curious, sympathetic people bending over the hedges no longer saw or heard anything except the lonely chirping of the cicadas. The house was empty, the phone was turned off, and only a receipt and a short angry inscription made it clear that some event had exploded here like a bomb, destroying everything that had been built for 16 years. He drove west, deep into the country, without stopping for long. Gas stations, shops, overnight stays in the car. No unnecessary movements, no calls, no documents. He tried to get rid of his past life as quickly as possible, more precisely, not to get rid of, but to erase it to the very depths of his bones, so as not to feel any more pain, betrayal, humiliation. In the evenings, he sat on the hood of a pickup truck, smoked, although he had never done this before, and watched the sky darken. The burning smoke burned his throat, the wind ruffled his short-cropped hair, but no physical discomfort could be compared with the mental one. He blamed himself for perhaps not being a better husband, blamed his friends for betraying him, blamed the whole world for not understanding. But most of all, he just didn't want to feel anything. Feelings are a luxury when you need to survive. He settled in one of the small towns in the Midwest. The job was found quickly. An advert from a local tool store was looking for a hands-on electrician for construction sites, payment in cash. Agreed. The one who was hired did not go into details. What about your documents, license? Nobody cares about formalities if you really know how to fix wiring and can lay cables to standard. Brasson had a lot of experience. He had been an electrician for almost his entire life at his home company in South Carolina. Now his skills are useful here in the gray zone. He rented a room in a shabby motel, then moved into an old trailer with Miss Edith, a smiling old woman who lived on the outskirts and had long made ends meet by renting out part of her property. The trailer was cramped and shabby, but it was already a step forward compared to a pickup truck, in which it was not always possible to sleep and wash properly. Miss Edith, despite her age, was cheerful and lively, and loved to talk about her past travels around the country with her long-dead husband. She saw that her new tenant had a difficult history behind him, but she never asked too many questions. Only sometimes, when he was sitting on a chair on the porch after a day of work, would she bring him lemonade and say, "Son, nothing is accidental in this life. Maybe what happened to you is not the end at all, but the beginning. Sometimes, in order to achieve something new, you have to burn bridges behind your back." Brayson nodded and didn't object. She was the only person who could even break through his wall. He did not feel irritation towards her, because she emanated simple compassion. Her words didn't go deeper than he allowed, but they didn't poison his soul either. After all, Miss Edith had a kind heart, and perhaps he needed it more than he cared to admit. However, he still has too many wounds from his previous life. He didn't call home, didn't ask how Sky was doing. In the depths of his soul, he understood that her mother had chosen her daughter, but he did not blame the girl. A teenager, caught in the whirlpool of a parental war, often clings to the one who seems dearer at that moment. And how he then shouted and cursed in court, how he pounded the podium with his fist, demanding that Sky be left with him. It was all too hard. However, now he avoided any memories. Every morning he got up before dawn. I brewed strong coffee on a small gas stove, poured boiling water over instant oatmeal, and threw in a little sugar. Breakfast was simple, but it guaranteed at least some energy for the day. Then he went to the construction site, skillfully handled the tools, measured the cables, and checked the voltage. The old habit of a scrupulous approach to work earned him the respect of his foremen. He was trusted with most of the project, and he worked honestly because it took his mind off things. Work became his only salvation from memories. This went on for about 8 years. During this time, he changed several towns. Sometimes construction sites were closed. Sometimes foremen disappeared, promising to return, but did not return. He remained outside the system. He received payment in person, did not disclose his real name, and did not use accounts. To most, he was Bray, Brace, Brian, depending on how you pronounced it. He practically never took his passport out of his battered bag. He didn't have a phone, and if he did use it, he used disposable mobile phones only to contact his employers. And every time he was looking for a place where he could park his trailer or rent inexpensive housing. Miss Edith eventually moved to live with her daughter in another state, and their connection was severed. But Brasson remembered her kind eyes. Perhaps this wise elderly woman was the only close person in all these years. The town where he met Sheila Brooks was typical of the Midwest. One main street, several side streets, shops, a couple of bars, a beauty salon, and a small restaurant, which was traditionally called a diner. All around were fields where the sun was hot in the summer and a chilling wind pierced in the winter. Sheila worked as a waitress in that same restaurant on Main Street. He often went there to have a quick meal after work. He always took an omelet and coffee. Sometimes he ordered fried potatoes so that he could relax a little and not cook himself in the trailer, which he again rented from a widow who needed money. At first, he hardly looked up at the waitress, only briefly thanking her when she brought food. But one day, when he entered the diner after a particularly difficult day at a construction site, she smiled at him not forcedly, but somehow sincerely and softly. It was unexpected and very affecting. Something similar to understanding flashed in her eyes. Perhaps she noticed how tired he was. He nodded briefly. "Thank you." "Long day?" she asked sympathetically. "Yes, it was a difficult installation, but it's okay, I managed." "As usual, an omelet? Or maybe something else?" He ran his hand wearily over his stubble and nodded. "Let's have an omelet. And beer, if you have it." "There is no beer yet. We only have a non-alcoholic menu. But I can recommend excellent homemade lemonade. They say it takes away the bitter taste of the day well." He chuckled, not knowing what to answer. Then I decided to try lemonade. When she brought it, cold, with thin slices of lemon and a few sprigs of mint, he took a sip, and he actually felt a little better. "Delicious," he commented briefly. "I'm glad you like it." Again, that sincere smile. "I'm Sheila, if anything." "Brayson," he said slowly, as if reminding himself what his own name sounded like. "Nice to meet you, Brasson." She went to take an order from another group at the table, leaving him alone with his own thoughts. He watched her out of the corner of his eye, a short, slender woman, her hair in a ponytail, and under her apron a t-shirt with the logo of some local sports club. She looked tired, but tried to give a smile to every visitor. It seemed that work was not only a source of income for her, but also a way to occupy her thoughts with something positive. That evening he ate, left a generous tip, and left, not daring to speak. But from that day on, he began to visit Sheila a little more often. Over time, they exchanged several routine phrases. "How are you? What's new? The weather is good tomorrow, right?" Nobody insisted on anything. It was just polite conversations. But both felt that in these short dialogues there was some kind of thread that could connect strangers. One evening, when there were few visitors, Sheila allowed herself to sit opposite him at the table for a couple of minutes and drink a cup of coffee. "You work in construction, right?" "Yes, electrical, wiring. Call me if there is a contract. I try not to sit idle." "How long have you been in our city?" "A couple of months ago." She nodded, hiding her eyes. "I've been living in this city for almost 5 years. Before that I was in a different place, but I had to move." This phrase alerted him, but also aroused his curiosity. "Problems?" "Yes," she answered, smiling briefly. "I don't want to go into details. Let's just say, life forced a change of scenery." He just nodded understandingly. Inwardly, he immediately felt that something similar was behind her. Pain, betrayal, an attempt to start over. But like him, she did not bother with questions. The next week, she tossed him a menu. "We now have one legal beer. The owner has received a license. Do you want to try it?" He smiled from the corners of his lips. "Yes, come on. We need to try something new." She brought him a bottle and a glass, and then, spinning around next to him, suddenly asked, "Listen, I have a day off tomorrow. Maybe we can go somewhere? I know a place nearby where there is a lake. The water is still cool, of course, but there is a nice picnic area there." He froze in confusion. He had not gone on any dates for a long time, and this whole word was almost a curse word for him. He forbade his heart to give in. But there was such quiet determination in Sheila's voice that he suddenly realized that this was an invitation, perhaps her own timid step out of her shell. "I guess I don't mind," he replied, looking away. "Why not?" "Great. Then I'll take my daughter and we'll all go together if you don't mind," she added, noticing how his face frowned a little. "She's 8 years old. Her name is Maddie. I think it would be good for her to unwind a little too." His own daughter. At the mention of Maddie, his heart sank painfully inside. He remembered Sky. She must be 22 now. Where is she? How is life? But he put this thought into the far corner. He only said, "Of course, I don't mind. I'll be glad to meet you." They met at the store, Sheila in her old Toyota and him in a pickup truck. Maddie, her 8-year-old daughter, sat in the back seat and looked at the unfamiliar adult with interest, while Sheila opened the trunk, putting out a basket of sandwiches and a thermos. "Hi," Brasson said, leaning over to greet the girl, still awkwardly strapped into her child's seat. "Hello," Maddie muttered. "I'm Bray." He introduced himself a little more briefly. "How are you?" The girl shrugged and hid her face, but he did not insist. They went to a park near a small lake. The place turned out to be very quiet. Several families were walking along the shore. A light breeze stirred the leaves. The lake itself was not very large, but the water sparkled in the sun, as if reflecting hope for a calm day. Sheila chose a clearing under the shade of an oak tree and spread a blanket. Maddie, having gotten used to it a little, began to run around, collecting small stones. "Is she shy?" Brasson asked when they were left sitting on the bedspread. Now, yes. After her father left for another woman, she became distrustful of new people. She tries not to get attached to anyone. She is afraid that she will be abandoned again. He just nodded, and an old pain stabbed in his chest. The words, quit, leave, another woman, all this mirrored his own past, only from the other side. Sorry, I didn't want to burden you, Sheila continued, looking into his eyes. I just recently got out of a dark place. 2 years ago, everything completely collapsed, and I promised myself that I would no longer live in memories. I had to move forward for Maddie's sake. I understand, he responded dully. I think you and I are not so different. Do you want to tell me? He pursed his lips and shook his head. Probably not. Sorry. Maybe one day, but not now. I understand. Everyone carries their own luggage, and you don't always need to know its details in order to sympathize. She handed him a bottle of cool tea. He took a sip and felt some lightness. They didn't ask him about the trial or about his daughter or why he was living under a false name. He was simply allowed to be who he was, a sullen man in work clothes, trying to survive another day. The evening passed quietly. They swam in the lake. Sheila and her daughter splashed near the shore, and Brassen only went knee-deep, wary as if the cold water or the very feeling of being close to people could burn him more than anything before. They ate sandwiches and then, while getting ready, decided to stop at a gas station for a glass of hot chocolate. Thanks for inviting me, Brassen said as Sheila stood next to him at the drink machine. Thank you for coming, she replied. I know that you don't particularly like the company of people. He leaned his elbows on the counter and looked away. It just happened that way. Happens. It's also hard for me to meet men, especially after what happened. But you are not like others. Serious, silent, as if he had been through a lot. We've all been through something, he concluded softly. She just nodded. From that day on, their connection began to grow stronger, although no one was in any particular hurry. He came to the diner almost every evening, told her a couple of short stories about his colleagues, funny incidents from the construction site. She shared stories about Maddie, about how the girl now goes to a new school, and how she is teased there for not being good at baseball. Little by little, they learned to laugh out loud at some ridiculous little things, without touching on the secrets deeply hidden in their souls. Several months have passed. Winter was knocking on the door, there was already a chill in the air, and the morning dew was covering the windshield of his pickup truck with silvery frost. One day, Sheila invited Brassen to her home. She and Maddie rented a small house with a rickety porch and a miniature yard. Inside it was cozy, albeit modest. A sofa, a couple of armchairs, a TV, a kitchen where everything was clearly kept clean. When he entered, Maddie was sitting on the floor, coloring pictures with felt tip pens. The girl glanced at him and again hid behind her sheets, muttering, Hello, Bray. Hi, Maddie, he smiled. I baked a pumpkin pie, Sheila said. I wanted to surprise you. I know Halloween is coming. I'm trying to keep in the autumn mood here. He sniffed, catching the appetizing aroma of cinnamon and sweet dough. It smells great. Come in, sit down. He took off his jacket, changed his shoes, and moved to the kitchen, where it was warm and the quiet crackle of the heater could be heard. Sheila cut the pie and gave him a piece. He tried and shook his head briefly with a smile. Nice pie. Thank you. I'm glad you like it. I learned to cook a lot when I had to live alone with a child. He remained silent with understanding. At that moment, Maddie timidly sat down on a stool next to them. Can I have a piece? Of course, dear, Sheila fussed. While the mother was cutting the pie, the girl asked in a whisper, Bray, are you afraid of Halloween? No, he was a little surprised. Should I? The scenery is scary, she said seriously, but I want to go to school for a party like a witch. Sounds great. When I was your age, I also loved scary costumes, he said and stopped short because he remembered Sky in childhood. She loved to dress up as a witch. With a smile from ear to ear, she ran around the neighbors for candy. Again, the unpleasant pain shook him, but he made every effort to keep a calm expression on his face. Mom said she can help with the costume, but I want a magic wand with glitter, and Mom says it's not very magical. But I want to. Maddie was indignant. Sheila shrugged as she handed out the pie. Let there be sparkles. Well, let it be unusual. Watching their exchange, these ordinary mother-daughter concerns, Brayson suddenly felt something tighten within him. He was both joyful and bitter. In this scene, he saw what he once had and what he himself by his own will or someone else's destroyed or lost. But it was necessary not to show it. After that evening, he began to come to them more often. Sheila did not rush things, but increasingly saw him as a person she could trust. And he, without wanting it, seemed to be drawn into the life of a small family where no one demanded explanations from him, but someone needed his support. It was unusual for him that he was treated not with hostility and not with flattering praise, as happened at a construction site when they wanted to extract concessions from him, but as a person who had a heart. One day, when she and Sheila were sitting in her living room after Maddie had gone to bed, she suddenly moved closer and said quietly, I know you have a secret. I'm not asking what exactly happened, but, if you want, I'm ready to listen. No judgment. He was silent for a long time, looking at the floor. Then he ran his hand over his face and looked into her eyes. Maybe, I'll tell you one day. It's just too painful to remember for now. Okay, she whispered. I just want you to know that I care. He answered her with a look full of gratitude, and at that moment, for the first time in many years, he felt that he was not completely cut off from the world. He gently took her hand in his, and she did not pull away. Sheila woke up a little earlier than usual that day. Light morning light filtered through the curtains, filling the cramped bedroom with a soft glow. She turned around at the warm breath next to her, the breath of Brayson, who was still sleeping, throwing his arm over the blanket, poured onto her pillow. They had already lived together for 8 months, a small family that they began to build on the ashes of past relationships. Sheila almost never asked questions about Brayson's former life. She felt that he was not yet ready to talk about the most painful pages. For a long time, she had missed his silent devotion, his sincere care, and the way he treated her daughter, Maddie. But today, according to some inexplicable signs, something in the air suggested a change was coming. She stretched, trying not to wake him, and quietly got out of bed. She tiptoed across the corridor into the living room, throwing on a long sweater as she went. I heard Maddie snoring quietly in her room. The house was still dozing, but outside the window the crows were already cawing loudly. In the kitchen, she turned on the coffee machine and took out mugs. Her gaze fell on the open chest of drawers against the wall in the living room. It was the same dark chest of drawers that they had brought from his trailer, which he stubbornly refused to let her take apart or put away. He explained it simply, there is something personal there, don't touch it. Usually Sheila did not pry into other people's secrets, knowing that everyone had their own skeleton in the closet. But now she noticed. The drawer was pulled out a little, and from under a stack of documents, a corner of a photograph sticks out. She came closer and saw that there were some papers in a file folder, something similar to official documents, birth certificate, old court papers, receipts. The folder was open, as if someone had been looking at it and forgot to close it. Sheila's heart sank as the unbidden thoughts that there was too much emptiness and mystery in Brayson's life intensified. She didn't want to break trust, but her gaze was already caught on the familiar word daughter on one of the English forms. Daughter, she breathed out almost inaudibly. He had previously mentioned that he had a great loss, but never went into detail. And even more so, he didn't tell me that he had a daughter. Hands themselves reached out to the document. She looked around cautiously. The house was quiet. Then she finally pulled out the folder and began to carefully leaf through it, trying not to wrinkle the pages. Names, dates. Sky Lowell, date of birth. The daughter is already 22 years old. Incredible, Sheila thought. All this time he lived with the thought of the child he so stubbornly hid. Why? The deeper she looked through the papers, the more her heart sank. Here are a few court papers. They were talking about divorce, about alimony, about division of property, about guardianship. The surname Lowell appeared next to the surname of a certain Daniela, and Trevor, this man, apparently, also appeared in the case as her. Lover? Nothing was completely clear, but one thing was clear. Brayson had a catastrophic past involving his family. And most importantly, he had a daughter whose existence he had kept silent about all these months. Sheila looked at one of the photographs. It was of a young man, undoubtedly Brayson, only now older, with a pretty woman and a sweet little girl of about 6. All three smiled, as if nothing in life could be more beautiful than their family idol. The photo had been taken a long time ago, but in the man's smile she could easily recognize the warm softness that she sometimes saw in him when he looked at Maddie. She felt a strange mixture of jealousy, resentment, and fear. Jealousy, after all, this was clearly once a happy time, and she was not there. Resentment, he didn't trust her enough to tell her about his daughter. And fear, if he once left that girl or did not maintain contact with her, then what will happen if she and her daughter find themselves in the same situation? Will this happen again? Pounded in her head. Quietly, so as not to wake either him or Maddie, she put the documents back in the folder and carefully closed the drawer. Then she sat down at the kitchen table, staring at one point while the coffee machine made noise and steamed. Her fingers trembled. She needed to calm down, think things over. But only one word swirled in my head. Daughter, daughter, daughter. She didn't feel like herself all day. At work at the diner, I mixed up orders and didn't notice the visitors. Towards the end of her shift, her friend and colleague, Gina, asked worriedly, "Sheila, what's going on? You seem to be in a fog today." "Nothing. Everything is fine. Just problems at home. I noticed that you've been tense for a week now. Are you sure everything is fine?" "I'll figure it out," Sheila said, tiredly wiping the tabletop and trying not to burst into tears. She realized that she couldn't keep it to herself. But she was afraid to talk about this with Brayson himself. For 8 months, he had never found the strength to mention his daughter, which means that this topic is forbidden and painful for him. What if she asks him a direct question and he gets angry and leaves? Previously, he, in his own words, was ready to go anywhere, just not to remember the past. Sheila was afraid of losing him, but she couldn't live pretending she didn't know anything. She needed to understand who he really was. That night, after Maddie had fallen asleep and Brayson had returned from a late shift at construction, Sheila made up her mind. "Bray, we need to talk." He tiredly threw his windbreaker onto the sofa and noticed her nervously fiddling with the sleeves of her sweater. "Did something happen?" "Yes. I was cleaning this morning and accidentally saw your documents. By chance, honestly. I didn't rummage around on purpose. The drawer was just slightly open." She chartered quickly, afraid of his reaction. He tensed, his eyes flashed with alarm. "And what exactly did you see?" "That's it. Birth certificate. Sky." Something twitched painfully in his face, but she continued, "You never said that you have a daughter." "Brayson, why?" He sank heavily into a chair and ran his hands over his face, as if trying to hide from reality. He was silent for a minute, and then said hoarsely, "Because I lost her, lost my family, and I didn't want to go through it again." "Have you lost her?" Sheila asked quietly. "But she's alive. Why don't you communicate with her?" He pulled away, clenching his jaw, as if he wanted to cut off any further discussion. But Sheila did not look away. "You have a daughter. Judging by her years, she is already in her 20s, and you hid its existence from me. Do you know how I feel now? It's like you didn't trust me. Understand, I couldn't speak. I left that life. She chose her mother," he said with bitterness. "When she was 14, she herself decided to stay with Danielle. I fought in court for custody, but everything was useless. But it's your child, damn it. How can you just throw your daughter out of your life?" "I didn't throw it away." He suddenly flared up, his eyes filled with pain. "I did everything I could, but Danielle and my ex-friend, they brainwashed her. And the judge was on the mother's side. Everyone stood against me. His voice broke. "In the end, I left everything to them and left. Yes, it was my decision. Maybe I made a mistake, I don't know. But I didn't want to make contact, you know. Too painful." They looked at each other for a few moments. He with despair, she with bitter determination. Sheila took a step forward and asked quietly, "And how many years have you not seen her?" 8, almost 9, he managed with difficulty. "I understand how it sounds, but I can't go back there. Sky is already an adult. She has her own life. She probably hates me, or she just forgot. Are you trying to find out at least something about her?" "No." His confession sounded like a gunshot. "I don't want to. I don't know how." Sheila fell silent. All the pain she saw in his eyes was real. But her pain was also real. Her daughter is growing up, whom she protects, and the thought that he had once turned his back on his child drove a sharp thorn into her heart. She closed her eyes and brushed away a tear that had come. "If you were able to break ties with her so easily, what would stop you from doing the same to us one day?" "I didn't do it easy," he muttered, but felt that his arguments sounded unconvincing. "Sheila, listen, I don't want to lose you, but I don't have the strength to return to that hell. Understand, I don't understand anything anymore." She couldn't stand it and ran out of the room, leaving him sitting alone. The next day she was depressed. Echoes of the past flashed through her head. Her ex-husband also left her and Maddie when she was 4. But unlike the situation with Sky, he at least sometimes called the child, albeit irregularly. Sheila tried to be honest with her daughter, explaining that Dad is in another city, sometimes he can call. But Brayson simply disappeared from Sky's life. And whatever his reason, Sheila could not get rid of the fear. What if at some point he decides to leave our lives as well, if something goes wrong? She walked all day as if in a dream, and suddenly a desperate thought came into her head. Find Danielle's number. Call him directly and let him tell you his side. Maybe everything was different there than he says. That evening, when Brayson again went to visit friends at work to repair urgent wiring in the workshop, she rummaged through the drawer. Among the documents, she came across old notes with contacts. I found a phone number, apparently, of my ex-wife. Her hands shook as she dialed the number. "Hello?" A female voice rang out, a little harsh and tired. "Hello? Is this Daniela?" "Yes." "Who is this?" Sheila took a deep breath. "My apologies for calling suddenly. My name is Sheila Brooks. Live with your ex-husband, Brasson Lowell." There was a pause on the other end, then a mocking snort. "Wow. Is it true? Interesting, interesting. And why are you calling me?" "I accidentally found out that he has a daughter. Sky. He doesn't keep in touch with her. And I—" Sheila paused, not knowing how to phrase it. "I don't know the whole story. He says that you took her, that she herself decided to stay with you. And you want to hear my version." The voice sounded slightly irritated. "Okay, why not?" "In short, yes, she stayed with me when she was 14. Everything was very scandalous then. But if the matter is true, he abandoned her himself. He left, crossed out of his life. Do you want details? I'm sorry, but that's a long time ago." "Danielle, wait. I understand that you broke up with him badly, but is there any chance that you will allow her to talk to him?" A sarcastic chuckle was heard at the other end of the line. "Does he want this himself, or did you decide for him?" "I don't know," Sheila breathed, "but I know he is suffering. I think he needs help to take the first step. I ask you, can you give me Sky's number? She has long been an adult, lives in another city. I don't keep her contact details secret, of course. But know this, if Sky wants to, she will call him herself. She decides for herself what she needs. They haven't spoken for so many years. How do you even imagine this reunion?" Sheila closed her eyes. She felt the waves of despair growing, but she continued stubbornly. "I also have a daughter. I don't want him to make the same mistake. If possible, give me her number. I promise I'll be careful." Danielle sighed, and a note of melancholy appeared in her voice. "Fine, but keep in mind, I haven't interfered in their affairs for a long time. Here's the number, write it down." Sheila quickly scribbled numbers on a piece of paper. Then, thanking her and holding back the trembling in her voice, she hung up. "It became even heavier in my soul. My ex-wife's voice sounded cold, as if all her feelings had long since burned out. But from the intonations, it was clear that there was also a lot of resentment, pain, and old anger. For 2 days, Sheila carried this piece of paper with Sky's number in her pocket, not daring to call. In the evenings, she saw how Brayson had withdrawn into himself. After that conversation, he avoided her gaze and spent the night almost without sleep, tossing and turning on the edge of the bed. Maddie, not understanding what had happened, tried to cheer them up, but the atmosphere in the house was tense. Finally, Sheila made up her mind. There was only one argument in her head. If he couldn't take the first step, then maybe someone else would take it, in order to help restore what should not have been lost forever. She found a moment when Brayson went grocery shopping and Maddie was with a friend. I dialed the number. "Hello?" A young female voice was heard. "Hello. Is this Sky?" "Yes, who is it?" Sheila took a breath of air. "My name is Sheila Brooks. Live with your father, Brasson Lowell." There was a painful silence at the other end of the line. "Father?" Sky asked with a bit of disbelief. "I haven't heard this word for many years." Sheila held her breath, realizing how difficult it was for her interlocutor now. Finally, Sky continued in a colder tone. "How did you find out my number?" "Your mother gave it to you. Sorry to bother you. It's just, I thought maybe you'd want to know that he's okay, and that I basically wanted to say that he is sorry. He suffers because everything broke down between you." Sky sighed bitterly. "Suffering? You say that you live with him. I guess he has a new life now, since he gave up the old one. I understand how you can think that way. But I see that he has not forgotten about you. He's simply too broken to admit his mistakes. Please, I'm not pushing, but maybe you should. See him? And why? He hasn't called me for 8 years." And now suddenly a voice appeared on the phone, and this voice said, "Come." "For what?" She said the last words with evil irony. Sheila swallowed, realizing how much pain was hidden in this girl. And yet I tried to find a tiny grain of hope. Sometimes people make mistakes and then don't know how to correct them. And, to be honest, I'm afraid for him. He became entangled in his own guilt and shame. Never mentioned you. I accidentally found documents and photos. I saw how happy he was when you were little." Sky was silent. Then a quiet, suppressed sob was heard. I I don't want to be rude to you. It's all so strange. I'm not asking you to understand or forgive him. But you might want to see with your own eyes what happened to him. To talk at least once without trial, without intermediaries, without any past grievances. He's still your father, no matter how you look at it. And I think he loves you, even if he doesn't dare show it." There was another pause at the other end. Then Sky quietly added, "What if it hurts me even more?" "I understand," Sheila replied, and there was genuine sympathy in her voice. "I can't force you. It's just, you can always call me if you want. You have the number. I'm ready to help organize the meeting. He doesn't know that I'm talking to you. But God knows, sometimes people need someone to take the first step for them. You, you are a very brave woman, Miss Sheila." I don't know what to say. "Just say, I'll think about it. This will be enough." Sky exhaled heavily. "Fine, I will think. If I decide, I'll call you back. And again, thank you for not being afraid to do this. Thank you for listening, Sky." They said goodbye, and Sheila sank into a chair, feeling tears running down her cheeks. She understood that there was no guarantee, neither that Sky would come, nor that she would even want to meet her father. But still, a small sprout of hope broke through the darkness. Maybe this meeting will be the first step towards healing. There was only one important point left. Should I tell Brayson about this? And how will he react? She looked at the phone, which displayed the last number dialed, and pressed her palm to her face, feeling her fingers tremble. Well, she thought, the way back is already closed. Now all that remains is to wait for the outcome. I hope he will understand that I did not do this out of desire to cause harm, but for his sake. Sky stepped out of the blue sedan and carefully slammed the door. The dust raised by the road made the color of her denim sneakers fade, and the wind immediately began to ruffle her dark brown hair. She ran her hand over her shirt tucked into her jeans, not daring to come closer. An alarmed Sheila was looking out of the window of the house, and he stood frozen at the porch, a tall, familiar, and at the same time almost alien man. Brassen Lowell stared at the girl, as if spellbound. He didn't need to guess. He would have recognized his daughter from 1,000. The same wave in the movement of the shoulders, the same look, stubborn, anxious, but full of some kind of childish vulnerability. Everything was mixed up in his head. The memory of how he once rolled 4-year-old Sky on his shoulders, her laughter, boisterous and sincere. Then a reminder flashed of that ill-fated day in court when she stood up and, biting her lips, whispered, "I want to live with my mother." Everything inside was broken. There was a painful lump in my chest. But instead of the expected explosion of emotions, instead of rushing to his daughter with a hug, he felt an icy numbness gripping his body. He stepped forward, tense, as if against his will, and whispered quietly, almost through clenched teeth, "Why did you come?" Sky looked at him for a long time. Her lips twitched, as if she wanted to say something, but could not find the words. She once dreamed of this meeting, imagining how her father, whom she had long blamed for betrayal, would suddenly rush to hug her, cry and ask for forgiveness. But looking at this stern man, cold, distant, she almost physically felt how any illusion was collapsing. Sheila appeared from behind. Careful not to intrude on their personal space, she walked a little closer and stood at the edge of the short path leading to the house. Her heart was pounding. Just recently, she was glad that Sky, having overcome her doubts, finally decided to come. But seeing the shadow that lay on Brayson's face, she realized that a quarrel and pain were already breaking out. Sky broke the silence with difficulty. Talk. Figure out. Understand what really happened. I can't live any longer with 1,000 unanswered questions swirling around in my head. For a moment, something soft seemed to flash in Brayson's eyes, but then it disappeared. He took a step back, as if putting up an invisible barrier. "I'm late. 8 years have passed. What's the difference now?" Sky gasped in resentment. She expected accusations, but not such a cold wall. "The difference is that all these years I didn't know why you left. Why didn't you try to contact me? I thought you didn't need me." There was a tear in her voice, breaking into tears, but she clenched her fists, trying to hold on. Sheila cast a quick glance at Brayson. His face was distorted with a painful spasm, but he, as if automatically, gave out what his fear prompted. "So it was. You chose your mother. The court, too. Everyone chose her. So what now?" Sky couldn't stand it. Her throat felt sore, and she suddenly screamed. "I was 14. 14, you know? Two sides pulled me by the arms. My parents screamed in court. This Trevor. I didn't understand anything. Yes, I was scared. And you left me." She felt the lump in her chest about to burst into tears. But instead of comforting or saying anything, the father pursed his lips and said harshly, "I couldn't stay there. I didn't want to see my mother taking advantage of all my efforts, a stranger in my house. But what does this have to do with me?" Sky could no longer hold back her tears. "I'm a child. Is it my fault that everything happened like this? Do I deserve to have you disappear like you don't exist?" There was indignation, resentment, and despair in her voice. Sheila, standing a little to the side, felt tears welling up in her eyes. She saw how hard it was for both father and daughter, who could not move past the old wound. Brassen made a sharp gesture with his hand, as if driving away an obsession. "Leave it. I'm no longer the person you knew. I have my own life, and you better go back to yours." Sky looked at him with eyes widened in pain, as if her last hope had collapsed before her. "I've already lived without you all these years. I thought maybe now everything would change, but—" Her voice broke off when she saw how he simply turned his back to her. "I have nothing to tell you," he said without turning around. "Leave." She felt the cold spreading through her body, and, unable to stay here another minute, she turned around to go to the car. But her legs seemed to give way, and she froze at the hood, shaking with sobs. Sheila, unable to bear it, hurried to Sky and timidly touched her shoulder. "I'm sorry. Forgive me. It was I who called you. I thought I didn't expect it to go so far." "It's not your fault," Sky squeezed out through tears. "You tried to do what was best." And yet, having made an effort, the girl opened the sedan door, got behind the wheel, and, without turning around, slowly moved away. A cloud of dust rose on the gravel road, and Sky's figure disappeared into it. Sheila stood, shocked and powerless, looking after the car. When the dust settled, she turned around and saw Brayson already in the house, dropping something noisily, as if in a fit of agony or rage. My heart skipped a beat. No, not this. When she walked inside, she found him jerking his clothes into an old duffel bag. He threw shirts, work pants, a couple of tools there, as if he was preparing to immediately escape. "What are you doing?" she exclaimed. "I'm going to leave," he said dryly, without looking at her. "Where?" "Wherever your eyes look. To another place, away from it all." "How then?" Sheila's voice broke. "Do you want to disappear again? And leave me with Maddie? Without a single word?" He threw a desperate, burning glance in her direction. "It's better that way than torturing you. I better leave before things get worse." "No." She stepped towards him, clenching her fists. "You're afraid. You are suffering. But if you run away again, you will lose everything. And us too." He froze. His hands clenched the edges of the bag until his knuckles turned white. For some time he stood silently, glaring at the floor. In the end, he muttered, "I've already ruined my life once. The second time I don't want to make someone suffer because of my cowardice, so it's easier for me to disappear. Then you will start everything from scratch, without me. How can you not understand that the pain of your leaving will only increase?" she exclaimed, and tears involuntarily flowed down her cheeks. "Maddie is already attached to you. I I love you, and I didn't call Sky to finish you off, and to help you fix what else is possible. If you leave now as you did then, you will not only hurt yourself, you will hurt everyone who loves you." Brasson lowered his head. My heart was pounding so hard that it seemed like it was about to burst out of my chest. Memories and guilt tormented his mind. "I love you" sounded loudly. He did not expect to hear these words at such a moment. Somewhere in the back of her mind, the image of Sky surfaced, her eyes full of tears, and the thought that she never knew how much he loved her, despite everything. "Do I really still deserve someone's love?" he whispered, almost under his breath. Sheila grabbed his hand. "You deserve it. If you're ready to stop running and face your demons. I know it's difficult, but keeping everything to yourself is even worse. How many years have you been trying to forget Sky yourself that whole life? Has it gotten any easier?" He was silent, squeezing the bag so that the zipper almost burst. Finally, with a painful curl of his lips, he released her and took a step back. "I don't know what to do," he admitted dully. "I saw her, Sky, and suddenly everything that I tried not to remember came crashing down on me. I again felt humiliated, unnecessary. I am her father, but at the same time, no, not for a long time. Time has passed, it's true. But you can at least try to tell her what you've never said. Let her decide what to do about it too." "What if she hates me even more?" he asked, breaking down almost to a whisper. "It's her choice. But if you run away, you won't even stand a chance. Understand, Brasson, it's not too late to change something." He sighed heavily and sank back onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. You could hear Maddie coming through the slightly open door into the kitchen. She must have returned from school. The girl froze on the threshold, looking at her parents in fear. There is fear on her face, as if she doesn't want a repeat of her past tragedy when her own father left. Brasson raised his head, saw Maddie, and realized that he was already hurting her with just his appearance and this bag. The girl approached slowly, holding a notebook in her hands. "Are you leaving?" Sheila gasped almost audibly, not knowing how to explain to a child something that was difficult for even adults to digest. But Brayson, meeting Maddie's gaze, read in it a mixture of anxiety, bewilderment, and timid affection. He felt ashamed. "I don't know," he mumbled. The girl pursed her lips and lowered her head. "Is it possible that you don't leave?" She said it so quietly that you could barely hear it. "I'm used to having you around. And Mom, she's very worried." There was silence in the room. Brasson felt something begin to shake inside him. Like a crack in the concrete wall he had been building around himself for many years. He wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Sheila hugged her daughter by the shoulders, trying to calm her down, while looking at Brayson with eyes begging him not to do anything stupid. It seemed like long minutes passed before he got up from the sofa and said hesitantly, "I can't promise that everything will be fine, but I don't want to hurt you." Maddie, hearing this, perked up a little and hope flashed in her eyes. Sheila understood that victory was far away, but at least he didn't throw the bag over the threshold, which means there is still a chance. "Let's do this," she said softly, trying to speak calmly in order to comfort the child first of all. "You won't leave now. Just think. Give yourself time to get over everything that happened. If necessary, talk to Sky or write to her. And if you're not ready, just tell her about it. But don't disappear without a word. Okay?" Brasson stood with his eyes downcast. It seemed that he was trying to look inside himself and find an answer there that did not exist all these 8 years. Finally, he nodded wryly. "Okay, I won't leave. Now." "Thank you," Sheila whispered and removed the bag strap from his shoulder. He didn't resist. On the contrary, it seemed that the tension was gradually leaving him, although the evil shadows of the past had not yet disappeared. Maddie smiled knowingly, and there was so much relief in that almost childish smile that Sheila's heart sank. She remembered how she felt as a little girl when her own father one day disappeared from life. She knew what fear could be experienced in such moments. And now, seeing how Brayson had moved at least for a moment, she prayed with all her might that he would not break again. A couple of hours later, while Maddie was doing her homework, Sheila and Brasson were sitting on the living room floor, their backs leaning against the sofa. The bag with things lay to the side, forgotten and unnecessary. There were cold cups of tea on the coffee table. Now no one remembered who brewed it and when. They sat in silence, as if trying to find new supports. "Forgive me," he suddenly said quietly, looking into his palms. "I understand that I'm hurting you. And Maddie, all because I can't cope with my fears." Sheila squeezed his hand. "I'm not angry. I'm just scared for you. It seems to me that you have driven yourself into darkness and do not believe that you can get out of it. Because where it all started, I no longer see any way back." Sheila shrugged her shoulders carefully. "What if it's not back? Maybe this is just a new way. Sky is already an adult. You will not be able to return to the family that was, and you will not be able to correct the past. But you can at least meet again and understand what you have in common. If she agrees, of course. After I pushed her away, it's unlikely she'll want to deal with me." His voice sounded dull. "I behaved like a monster with her." Sheila thought about Sky leaving in tears. But in these tears, there was not only hatred, there was resentment and maybe hope. After all, she came knowing what this conversation might turn out to be. "If you want, you can call her. You have her number," she suggested. "You will say that you behaved like a fool and ask for forgiveness. At least try." He nodded quietly, mechanically squeezing Sheila's hand. Doubt was still visible in the eyes, is it worth it? But somewhere deep inside him, a new sensation had already begun to sprout, as if a sprout was reaching out from a cracked shell, timid and vulnerable. Perhaps this is what a chance for change looks like. By evening, he still did not dare to call. Short scenes of their meeting at the house flashed before my eyes. Sky's eyes, full of tears, her trembling voice. "I was a child." Sheila didn't press. She just asked quietly before they went to bed, "Do you really have to leave tomorrow?" "No," he answered briefly. "I will stay." Bye. It wasn't until Sheila went to put her daughter to bed that Brasson picked up the bag again and absent-mindedly pulled out a photo from an old wallet. In the photo, Sky was still just a baby smiling, all smeared with chocolate ice cream. On that day, many years ago, He promised her that he would always be there for her. "You are my girl," he whispered then, wiping her sticky fingers, "and I will always love you more than anything in the world." How much time has passed since that minute, and how much pain has accumulated since then? Lord, he whispered, hiding his face in his hands. And quietly, almost inaudibly, footsteps were heard in the corridor. Sheila came in, sat down next to him, and carefully hugged his shoulders. He didn't pull away, on the contrary, he buried his face in her neck, barely holding back his tears. And so they sat for a long time, hugging each other, until the room became completely dark. Outside, the wind shook the old trees. Somewhere there, on the road, or already in the neighboring state, Sky was driving back to her life. No one could promise that she would pick up the phone and give him a second chance. But now, through the fear and confusion, a strong desire arose in him, to at least try. And Sheila hoped that he would really take this step not only for the sake of his daughter, but also for his own sake. And then, if everything works out, and for the sake of the new family that they began to build with him, relying on faith and love, that everything may still not be in vain. Brayson woke up with a heavy feeling in the pit of his stomach. It seemed to him that there was a thorn in his chest that did not allow him to breathe fully. The same half-disassembled sports bag still lay on the floor next to the bed, a silent reminder that he was about to run again. But this time I didn't run. Doubts, anxiety, fear of losing closeness with people again. All this was seething inside, but some quiet, persistent voice said, "You cannot run away again. Sky deserves it. Sheila and Maddie, too." Gathering his thoughts, he slowly got out of bed, put on a shirt, and went out into the hallway. Sheila and Maddie were still sleeping. It wasn't even 6 in the morning, but he couldn't lie there any longer. He glanced briefly at the switched-off phone, a real one, not a burner phone that Sheila had persuaded him to get recently. He put it in his pocket, as if preparing for an important conversation. Only one thought pulsed in my head. I need to go to her. We need to explain, ask for forgiveness. It may be too late, but I have to at least try. He quietly got into the car, remembering all the places he and Sheila had already visited over these 8 months. All this time he was building something new, trying to forget the old. But without solving long-standing pain, one cannot truly move on with life. Deciding not to wake Sheila, he wrote a short message. "I'm leaving for the day. I'll be back with an answer. I'm sorry I can't discuss everything in advance. I love you. Take care of Maddie. Yours, Bray." Then he started the pickup, cleared his throat, trying to calm down, and drove along the road leading to the highway that led towards the city where Sky settled. He spent the whole day on the road. Thousands of phrases were born in his head, but they all burned out as soon as he imagined Sky looking at him again with eyes full of reproach. He was afraid that he would lose his temper again and say too much. I was afraid that everything would go to waste. But this time it was impossible to remain silent. Towards evening, he reached the city where, according to Sheila, or rather, according to the phone number she received from Danielle, Sky could live. His heart was trying to jump out of his chest when he parked at an inconspicuous coffee shop, where, according to the phone, Sky sometimes worked part-time. He walked inside, holding his cap to his side, as if trying to keep his hands busy. There were few visitors, mostly students and couples at tables. There was a girl with light brown hair standing behind the coffee machine counter. But it wasn't Sky. Noticing the confused Brayson, the barista nodded. "How can I help?" He swallowed a lump and hesitantly approached. "Hello, I'm looking for Sky Lowell. They told me she works here." The girl frowned. "Usually yes, but today she hasn't come on shift yet. Try it at the dorm if you are her friend." The word friend grazed my ears painfully, but he thanked him, took a cup of the strongest coffee and left, after asking for directions to the nearby campus. He wandered around the dormitory building for about half an hour, feeling like a spy. Finally, I noticed a silhouette, a thin girl with a ponytail, dressed in a light autumn jacket, came out of the glass doors, talking about something on the phone, and he immediately realized that it was Sky. Although she looked more mature than in his memories, There was no doubt about her facial features. When she saw him, she almost dropped her phone. She blinked and twitched, as if she wanted to turn back. He stepped closer, slowly and fearfully. Sky. Sky took the phone away from her ear. They looked at each other silently for several seconds. Then she looked to the side, pressing her hands into her pockets. "Why did you come?" Her voice sounded smoother than then, but the same sting of resentment was visible in her eyes. "To ask for your forgiveness." He himself couldn't believe that he could say it so directly. "I behaved like a callous, selfish person. When you arrived, Yes, I remember," Sky snapped, hiding the trembling in her voice. "You told me to leave. You said it was too late to change anything." "I was wrong," he exhaled, squeezing the cap in his hands so that the rim pressed his palm. "I said stupid things out of fear. That day in court, all those years ago, when you chose your mother, it destroyed me. I don't blame you, Sky. Honestly, I just couldn't stand the betrayal, the pain, everything that was going on then. It was as if the ground had disappeared from under my feet." He spoke and felt like somewhere inside a tight knot was breaking, the same one that had been tightening all his feelings for years. Sky listened with her eyes downcast, but gradually tears filled her eyes. "But I was angry with you all these years," she whispered, "because you didn't call, didn't show up. I waited, and then I said to myself, why is he needed? He left me, which means I'm not important to him." Brasson couldn't stand back any longer. He took a step towards her and, barely restraining himself, gently touched her shoulder. "You have always been important to me. It's just my pride, my pain, it all blocked the road. I thought that you betrayed me by choosing your mother. I wasn't myself, Sky, I really was." And he ran away. "Now I understand that it was a terrible mistake." Tears flowed from her eyes. She tried to turn away, but he gently hugged her. And suddenly she buried her face in his jacket, bursting into tears. A passerby reluctantly turned away, realizing that something personal was happening. Brasson felt his own voice become hoarse. "Forgive me. Forgive me if you can. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, no. But I want to at least explain to you that I never stopped loving you. Never." Sky pressed herself against him, as if she was finally breaking free from the tenacious grip of all this long-standing resentment. They stood there for so long, and at some point he realized that he was crying too, although this was not typical for him. But next to his daughter, whom he considered lost, all the walls inside him broke. "I missed you too," she sobbed. "I wanted you to be there for my graduation, for my birthday. But you just disappeared. I didn't know what to think." He stroked her head, realizing that nothing could be returned. "You can only try to find a way forward. I know. And no words can change the fact that I was weak. I promise only one thing. If you allow me, I won't run away anymore. I want to introduce you to the new life that I have developed. I want you to know everything about me, how I feel, who I work with, what good remains in me. If you need it, of course." Sky suddenly emerged from his embrace, wiped her tears with the back of her hand, and said in a trembling voice, "I'm scared, but I think I want this. I don't know if we will be able to become father and daughter again, but maybe we will find a way to be with each other again." A warm feeling that Brayson hadn't felt in years washed over his heart. He nodded. "Thank you. I respect your feelings. If you want, you can come with me. I'll introduce you to Sheila and her daughter, Maddie." "Sheila?" Sky smiled slightly, remembering the excited woman who called her. "She looked very kind and desperate." "She saved me in a way," Brasson admitted, "and I hope that now we can all start something new together. If you agree, of course." Sky sighed, wiping away the tears that were coming. "I will try. I have a break before the exams. I can go for a week, or at least for a few days. I'll see how it goes." Of course, he smiled through the moisture in his eyes and carefully hugged her again. This time she pressed closer to him without pushing him away, and in the depths of his soul, he felt that the icy desert began to recede. The evening was already turning into a warm night when they arrived at the low house that Brassen had recently shared with Sheila and Maddie. On the way, he sent a message to Sheila. "I found her. We're going. Sorry, it's all so sudden." The answer came almost immediately. "We are waiting. I love it. Be careful." Skye nervously fiddled with the sleeve of her jacket as Brassen turned off the engine at the gate. Two figures were already standing on the porch, Sheila and Maddie. In the light of the lantern, one could see how the girl was worried, shifting from foot to foot. Sheila smiled at the sight of Skye and, going down the step, waved her hand. "Hi, Skye," she said softly. "Glad you came. I really wanted to give you a chance to talk." Skye nodded, feeling a lump in her throat, but Sheila immediately extended her hand. She hesitantly squeezed it, and at that time Maddie approached them. "Hello, I'm Maddie. You're mine." She suddenly became embarrassed, hesitating. "That is, I'm yours. Uh, well, yes, I'm Brayson's daughter." Skye smiled, also a little shy. "So we're kind of like stepsisters." "Cool," Maddie blurted out, smiling from ear to ear, and unexpectedly for everyone, she quickly hugged Skye, as if feeling that this was something important for everyone. Skye froze for a split second and then returned the hug, awkwardly patting the girl on the back. Warm excitement flashed in the looks of everyone present. Brayson finally came closer too, hugging Skye by the shoulders more freely, without that former horror. "God," he thought, "do I really have the right to this happiness?" They sat down to dinner inside the house. Sheila spontaneously made hearty sandwiches and reheated yesterday's soup. A tense but bright atmosphere reigned at the table. Everyone tried to speak quietly and kindly. Maddie excitedly told Skye about how she was soon having an exhibition of drawings at school. Sheila interjected remarks, and Skye nodded and smiled, occasionally shooting glances in the direction of her father, as if again learning to believe that he was here, nearby. When it was time to go to their rooms, Skye apologized and said that she was very tired from the road and from a whole day of emotions. Sheila showed her the small guest bedroom, gently suggesting, "If there's something missing, don't be shy, tell her." The girl thanked her, and before closing the door behind her, she briefly met Brayson's gaze. He quietly wished her good night, and she nodded in response. Later in the living room, by the light of the table lamp, Sheila stood next to Brayson. On the table nearby were 2 cups of cooling tea. In the silence, it suddenly became clear that something had changed in him. In his gaze, there was no longer that gray despair and angry detachment that had fettered him before. He took Sheila's hand as if about to say something, and then a realization stirred in him. It was this woman, with her kindness and perseverance, who did the impossible. She returned his daughter to him and gave him a new family. "I'm no longer the one who drops everything and runs," he thought. "I want to live a different life." Swallowing hard and taking a deep breath, he suddenly dropped to one knee in front of the astonished Sheila. My heart pounded in my chest so loudly that the whole house could probably hear it. She opened her eyes wide, covering her mouth with her hand. "Sheila Brooks," he began, feeling his voice tremble, "you saved me, my soul. You gave me a second chance. You brought me back to my daughter and taught me to love again. I, most of all, want to spend my whole life with you and become a real family. I know it's ridiculous to propose marriage in my situation, but I want to be with you and Maddie forever. And with Skye if she allows it. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Sheila's eyes. She once dreamed that someone who would love her and accept her daughter would propose to her not out of pity, not by coincidence, but by the call of her heart. And this is happening now, and even so anxiously after all the storms and fears. "Yes," she breathed, falling onto his lap and hugging his neck. "Yes, yes, and 1,000 times yes." He laughed, a quiet, husky laugh, holding her close to him, and she felt his shoulders relax in the embrace, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from them. Quiet footsteps were heard from the corridor. Apparently, Maddie and Skye, having heard the noise, ran out to see what was happening. Seeing this picture, Maddie clasped her hands. "Are you getting married?" "Hooray," Sky, standing a little further away, smiled and also wiped away a tear. It was still unusual for her to see her father show feelings, but at that moment she felt something similar to sincere joy for him. Sheila, holding hands with Brayson, turned to them. "Well, if you don't mind, it looks like we'll have one big family. Sky, do you mind?" Sky shook her head, still smiling through light tears. "No, I don't mind. On the contrary, I am very happy for you. I could use a little time to get used to everything, but I'm really happy that he found his person." Maddie walked up to Sky and timidly reached out to her. "It turns out that we are sisters now, right?" Sky hesitated, smiled, and hugged Maddie. "Yes, conjoined, but still sisters." The girls shared such a sincere hug that Sheila felt warm inside, and Brayson could barely contain himself not to cry. If someone had told me about this a year ago. A thought flashed through his mind, but he only smiled through the joy and remnants of pain. He understood that this was not the end of the story, but a new beginning. They still have to live through many difficult moments. We will have to talk about the past, heal wounds, and build trust. But now, on this quiet evening, everyone understood that they had taken a decisive step towards each other. "Okay," Sheila sniffed, looking at her girls, "it's time to go to bed. Tomorrow is a long day, and there is so much to discuss." Sky nodded and walked along the corridor with Maddie, laughing quietly that her little sister did not give her a pass, throwing up questions about the future, about plans, and about their common home. Brayson and Sheila were alone in the living room. He pulled her towards him, resting his forehead against hers, feeling calm, even happiness. She said yes, he repeated to himself, and at that moment it seemed to him that the world had regained its colors. "Thank you for not letting me leave then." And what did Sky find? "I love you," Sheila answered, and that was enough for all doubts to dissolve in the silence of the night. It's been a few years since Brayson and Sheila officially got married. Life, which once seemed to him a continuous strip of pain and loss, was now filled with light and meaning. In the quiet house from which their common future began, events developed rapidly and joyfully. Maddie and Sky became real sisters, albeit stepsisters, but very close. And Brayson himself, who once received a second chance, did not miss the opportunity to build a fundamental support for himself and his family. Persistence and years of experience allowed him to achieve what he could not have dreamed of during the darkest period of his life. At first, he led a small team and took on complex amounts of work on the installation and adjustment of electrical networks. Gradually, connections and reputation grew, and soon Brayson began to be invited to larger projects in Central Texas. Sheila supported him in everything, sparing neither time nor effort to help him establish a competent system for doing business. So, almost unnoticed by him, a team of loyal specialists, foremen, and administrative workers formed around Brayson, all those who saw a real leader in this strong, honest, and once slightly gloomy man. A couple of years later, as if in an increasing spiral, the small enterprise turned into one of the most respected electric companies in the region. Now the sign at the entrance read, "Lowell Electric Solutions." Word of the company's reliability and responsibility spread throughout Central Texas. Large construction companies preferred to sign contracts with them. Under the leadership of Brass and Lowell, everything went on time and to the highest standard. Sheila sometimes jokes, "Is this really the same fugitive who hid from everyone for 8 years?" To which he, looking up from his papers or asking to leave a meeting, answered with a smile, "I may have been a fugitive, but now I'm only running forward." The birth of little Katie was the next bright event that turned their world upside down. Sheila worried for a long time whether she would be able to become a mother again and give her child as much love and attention as she needed. But seeing how Brayson blossomed at the mere thought of his daughter, she calmed down. Now they were in this together. "Can you imagine," he said to his friends, "this time I will see how my daughter grows from the very beginning. No more running away." Katie grew up inquisitive and cheerful pigtails, bows, running around the yard with rompers, and a little later with children's toy instruments, which she liked no less than dolls. After all, Dad is an electrician and a businessman, and in her eyes, he is also a superhero. Maddie was almost not jealous, on the contrary. She looked at her sister with a gentle smile, proudly thinking, "Now there are three of us girls in the family." Sky, coming for holidays or weekends, also couldn't get enough of the baby. For her, it was almost magic. As a child, she lacked such family harmony, but now she could observe it in its entirety. Perhaps one of the happiest days in Brayson's life was the day when Sky announced, "I'm getting married." He kept her confession a secret for a long time, hiding his quiet pride from his acquaintances. After all, for him it meant not just his daughter's wedding, but the final restoration of a connection that had once been severed. "Dad," Sky said, catching him after a work meeting, "Tom and I will have a small ceremony. Not too lush, just family, but I want you to be the one to lead me to the altar. This is very important to me." Brasson felt his legs give way. Until recently, he did not believe that she would even call him Dad, and now she asks him to walk her to the altar. The blood began to roar in my ears, and my eyes stung for a moment from rolling tears. "Of course, baby," was all he could say, hugging Sky. "I'll be happy." The ceremony itself took place in a small country house decorated with wildflowers. Sky, in a lace dress, looked airy and light. The guests stood in a semicircle under the tent, and the music flowed smoothly and solemnly. When Sky took her father's arm, out of the corner of his eye, he saw Sheila wiping away tears on the sidelines, and Maddie and Katie, who had already grown to 4 years old, looked with envy at the shining dress. Step by step, they walked along the path to the groom Tom, a calm and reliable guy. Brasson felt a bittersweet tremor of happiness. He remembered how he once thought that he would never see Sky again and would never have the opportunity to participate in her fate. But the past, no matter how painful it was, did not cancel this moment, and he felt, now everything is for real. Warm hugs after the ceremony, photos in which Sky laughs through her tears, and he hugs her to him. "I love you, daughter. I'm sorry I wasted so much time." Sky responded in a quiet whisper, "We'll have time to catch up, Dad." And in these words, there was a powerful charge of hope and love. While joy and holidays reigned in the Lowell house, Danielle and Trevor remained somewhere on the other side of the state, or even beyond its borders. The very people whose betrayal pushed Brasson into the abyss, from which he emerged a new man. Over time, scant rumors were heard from old acquaintances. Danielle, after her divorce from Trevor, found herself in a rather difficult situation, then returned to him again. Then they tried to go into business together, but nothing worked out. In a word, their life did not turn out to be a brilliant success. People noticed that both of them had become very fat, trying to eat stress with fast food, and had acquired habits from which former money could no longer save them. Trevor, who once shone in high circles, has lost both influence and fame, and a premature weariness has settled in his eyes. Brayson showed little interest in them. He closed this page a long time ago, choosing his new family and not wanting to return to old wounds. But Sheila decided differently. Every year, right before Christmas, she sent them a card. Regular, store-bought, with festive decorations. And inside, there is a laconic inscription. "Thank you for betraying him. Thanks to you, we now have a real family." At first, Brayson was even surprised why he was doing this. But in the depths of my soul, I understood that Sheila was not mocking or mocking in this way, but as if putting an end to it, reminding us over and over again, "Your betrayal turned out to be a blessing for us." And perhaps she believed that in the souls of Danielle and Trevor, at least something would tremble from the realization that happiness was found not by the one who made insidious plans, but by the one who went through pain and learned to love again. "I don't care what they think," Sheila said when Brayson asked ironically, "Did you send them a card again? I do this for myself. And so that they know that the world is unfair, but sometimes it turns on the good side towards those who deserve a second chance." And Brayson, taking her hand, smiled. "In some ways, you are right. Let them know." One warm summer day, Texas was sweltering, but they had a wonderful, cozy porch in the shade, and their entire large family gathered for a party to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the opening of their new large office, Lowell Electric Solutions. Maddie was already 15. She was seriously interested in music and learned to play the guitar. Sky came with her husband and brought a lot of funny stories about her student friends and work because she had graduated from university and was now trying herself in an architectural office. Katie, a 7-year-old fidget, was running around treating everyone to gingerbread cookies that she had baked with her mother. There were cool drinks on the table, the scent of freshly cut wildflowers was in the air, and the conversation was full of jokes, teasing, and fond memories. Brasson looked at all this from the outside and realized, once upon a time he could not imagine that he would have such real happiness, that he will sit next to the woman he loves, look at the happiness of his children, enjoy peace of mind and confidence in the future. He pulled Sheila into his arms, and she pressed herself against him, touching his chin with her cheek. "You know," she said, "sometimes I still remember your look when I first saw you in the diner. So distant, as if you didn't want to let anyone near you." "Yes," he responded, grinning. "That day my life took a sharp turn, although I had no idea yet. Do you think we would have succeeded in all this if Danielle hadn't betrayed you?" Sheila asked slyly. "Perhaps not, but I'm still happy that we are here now." Sheila smiled as she watched Katie pull Maddie towards the swing, and Maddie winked at Sky with the air of an older sister, hinting, "Oh, this little one just won't let me pass." Sky laughs in response, "Go rock your sister." Everything was mixed up in such a familiar and joyful noise, and the clear sky hung over the veranda, and under the rays of the evening sun, the family gathered together felt that the future belonged to them. No one knows what trials may arise tomorrow, but now they know for sure. Their bond is stronger than any storm. As Brayson stood up to go get more lemonade, Katie suddenly jumped up, grabbed his arm, and demanded, Dad, I'm thirsty too. I'm coming with you." And he, laughing, picked her up, winked at Sheila, and went to the table. He, the same man who had once sworn that he would see Danielle in hell, now lived in another world. In a world where he was loved and could love himself, where at any moment he could take his youngest daughter in his arms and say, "This is real happiness," and lead the daughter who was once offended by him to the altar, and where the past forever remained only a lesson that taught him that even in the deepest despair, there is a place for second chances if you find the courage to accept them. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.